welcome to When IT Hits the Fan, brought to you by Rhyno Healthcare Solutions. I'm Christian Patillo, and today we have with us Petar Bojovic. Petar, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and can you start us off with who are you and what do you do?
Sure, no problem. Again, my name is Petar Bojovic. I'm an AVP in IT technology, focusing on infrastructure, engineering, and operations. And most recently, I've been focused on our public cloud practice here at work.
And can you tell me a little bit of what got you into this field?
Yeah, so if you could jump in the Wayback Machine, gosh, it's probably junior year, senior year of high school when people ask, hey, what do you want to do the rest of your life? And most people are like, I don't know, right? Or they have some grandiose plan that they want to commit to. I was kind of more on the I don't know side. And so what happened was my brother, I have two older brothers that both had degrees in engineering. One's a mechanical and one's chemical. So I thought maybe I'll go an engineering route and around the same thing. But my middle brother, he had an internship and he decided to invite me to kind of just see different parts of how a business works. And it was a manufacturing company that basically was a little bit of a punch press, kind of dirty, very loud. People would smoke, things of that nature. And it was just, I don't know, it just wasn't necessarily appealing for me. And throughout my life, just like most people, I use technology as a capability to get something done. So think of like using a spreadsheet to track something or make things more, projects become more efficient, or like I said, tracking, or maybe using other applications or other tools. I never thought of using IT and infrastructure as an actual career. So I ended up shadowing him at one of his internships for a day. And I spoke with these two basic computer and infrastructure managers that were running the business. And number one, they were inside this air conditioned, cooled office. They basically seemed like they had these jobs and positions that were, number one, very important, but more importantly, they really enjoyed what they were doing. So I started picking their brain about around what they did and the degrees that they had and things of that nature. And it really allowed me to understand that technology can be used as a tool to support whatever you're trying to get done, but you can also use that as a career. Because of that chance kind of meeting with my brother and his internship, I decided to pivot my future and focus on infrastructure and information systems. And ended up getting a degree that married both computer engineering as well as the business side. It's a CIS degree, a computer information system degree. I ended up getting that, which helped me kind of start my career going forward in technology.
And you've been at different size enterprises. You've been on more lean startups, you've done infrastructure, and now you're a large scale enterprise leader. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the similarities and differences between different companies of different weights? What are things that you see every time, and what are some different things now that you're in a large scale provider?
I think the one thing that I've noticed is that nobody does it right or whatever their ideal path is, and there's always problems to be solved. And the exciting thing for me is around change, that there's every day is an opportunity to implement some positive change into the organization. We're always busy doing many different things. And so from a startup, it was nice because you're just trying to churn out code. You're trying to churn out a solution as quickly as possible as part of a go-to-market strategy. What you did is you cut corners around standardization, around patterns, around policies. When that startup went from a small, and I was like in the first 30 people hired, ended up growing to about 1,500 plus people in a very short amount of time. And then that's when you realize, oh, wow, there's growing pains that have occurred. And so some of the things that were fun and exciting that were in the early stages are not sustainable as you start to grow into a different size organization. So it was interesting going from the fast-paced startup to okay, we have to slow things down, make sure we have policy process in place. And then you shift gears into some other jobs that I've had around technology focus. Operations and policies and procedures and standards have always been kind of an undertone across all of them, and all those organizations that have had that documented or well thought out usually are much more mature and not usually chasing. And when I joined my current organization, there were some very good standards and policies and patterns, but there's always opportunity for improvement. The other thing that I noticed is that you could take a lot of good things from each company, but also you need to recognize the bad things in each company too, and what not to carry on from your previous employers or previous work into your future work. So I think it's the best of both worlds, is kind of having an open mind, listening, learning, growing, and taking kind of the best pieces that you can cherry pick and applying that into your future part of your careers.
And one thing I will say about you is that when I read your job position, it goes on like a train car, boxcars, boxcars, boxcars. You're in charge of so much, and it's so impressive. And so I'd love to get your definition or perspective on just what leadership in IT infrastructure really is. Maybe some misinformation that people have about the idea of what's called for, because maybe they think that it's incredibly tech based when really it's more about the people.
It is about the people, but I think the interesting thing is when you have a big span of controls around technology, you have to lean in on your people. You have to surround your people around, surround yourself around people you trust, but more importantly, not only trust them, but empower them and hold them accountable. Too many times you either hold people accountable without any empowerment for change, or you try and empower them but not hold them accountable. So it's kind of a mess. And when you do both those, I found that that is really a good recipe to enact a lot of positive change. One thing, the other thing that I talk about a lot is about being wrong. I'm not the smartest person in the room. I shouldn't be the smartest person in the room. How about that? I want to be surrounded by people that know a lot of things about the specific towers that they support. I will lean in on them. I will talk to them about what are some good things, what are some bad things, what does the future look like, and we really kind of have a collective decision on what the path is moving forward. It's really about getting buy-in. As I mentioned, there are times that we will be wrong, but when everyone is bought in, it's much easier to pivot when everyone's bought in, especially if there's a decision that needs to be adjusted. It's really, again, about the people around building culture, understanding what's in it for them, talking about benefits versus features of things that we're trying to do, while we're trying to do it, and who we're trying to do it for.
And something I know about you is that you have the triangle of
Yes.
priorities. I'd love if you'd walk us through that. That was so wonderful when I first got to hear about it.
Sure. I call it a triangle of, there's a camera, triangle of priorities. And so at the tip of the triangle is basically who you serve. So it could be a member, it could be a business unit, it could be a customer, it could be an individual, it could be any one of those. That's at the tip of that triangle. The whole reason we're in business of what we're doing is trying to support and serve that tip. The next layer down is really the organization or the company that you work for. The next most important thing is what are these enterprise goals that you're trying to achieve? So what benefits the customer? What benefits the company? And then as you go down into maybe your division and then your team, and at the bottom of that triangle right here is yourself. When you prioritize that triangle, what's the most important thing at that tip, which is the customer and the organization, a lot of your decisions are never wrong because you're trying to benefit what is the enterprise and what are the people that you serve. Too many times that I've witnessed throughout my career, it's an inverse triangle. So what is the most important thing is usually people's teams or themselves. And that becomes very easily spottable when you talk with people and organizations and groups and teams and divisions that they're only worried about what's best for them and themselves and their team, but not what's best for the customer or the organization that they serve. So for me, when I talk and I live my life around the triangle of priorities, is that my decisions that I make really focus on how do we move that needle forward and how do we achieve our goals as an organization, as an enterprise, and how do we serve the people the best way that we can and the fanatical support or through amazing services and things of that nature. And it's never about, ooh, what's the latest, greatest technology that's going to help me do my job. It's always about them first and me last. It's really a servant style leadership that I do. And that triangle of priorities kind of help keeps me grounded when I try and make decisions or where there's difficult decisions to be made. And I say, okay, what part of that triangle is it supporting? If it's supporting the tip of that triangle, fantastic, easy decision. If it's supporting the bottom of the triangle, which is some team or some individual, it's usually not the best path forward. And it becomes very, very easy to spot.
And I think sometimes that people can think everyone in tech is a robot, but you've mentioned before that you are stronger at people than at tech. And I think that's why you've had so much success in leadership. But can you tell us a little bit more about being a leader of people in the tech field, and also maybe give some advice for those of us who are a little bit more hands-on keyboard, less face-to-face with less skills in that regard?
Sure, no problem. I think you need all parts, right? So you need folks that are fingers on keyboard, that want to be locked in a room and just focus on solving a problem. You need that. You also need folks that are in a position like myself that are pushing collaboration, pushing communication, pushing understanding, focusing on perspective taking, right? I rarely get into any sort of heated conversations. Passion is important, but there's no need for heated conversations because I'm able to, which people don't do as much today, pick up the phone or maybe not, virtually pick up the phone, right? And have a conversation. Too many times I see emails, boom, 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 going back and forth. Somebody says something, misinterprets it, sends it again, and it's just this long-winded this tit for tat, which is not helpful and definitely not healthy to move the priorities of that triangle forward. And so I always encourage folks to stop, breathe, listen, understand, right? Not always talk first, but listen more, pick up the phone and have a conversation. And I tell you how many things have been shortcutted because of just picking up that phone virtually and having a conversation and understand. You get those aha moments. That's what you meant by that statement. I thought it was this. And so it allows folks to hopefully kind of keep their ego checked and diffuse any of that frustration that gets done. And for me, it's around collaboration, it's around communication. When people understand the purpose, understand the why we're doing it, and we could tie it into them being bought in, it really makes my job very easy because it allows them to shine at what they really do, whether it's the fingers on keyboard, whether it's, project management or execution or operations or, day two type of components or day one of bringing things up or new technology. It allows people to understand the grander why we're doing it and what does success really look like and how we get there.
And that dovetails perfect into my next question, which is about networking and the value of maybe even stepping out of your own team, either finding people in other enterprises that have your same position or finding people in your own enterprise that are just on different projects. Can you tell us a little bit more about maybe the importance of networking, as well as how to do it in the more remote, long distance world that we find ourselves in?
Well, I'll start instead of the benefits. I'll start why people maybe don't do it. There's that lone wolf syndrome. Hey, I want to accomplish it myself, so I have a level of satisfaction. I felt that way in my 20s and really in part of my 30s, where I'm like, well, I want to figure it out myself because if I figure it out myself, then I'm going to learn more than asking somebody and then they telling me the answer and I don't learn that way. It was a foolish way to think, quite frankly. And it took some time and some really good mentors to kind of smack me virtually in the head and say, hey, listen, the whole purpose of networking is to build that strong collaboration, understand that folks have experienced what you're going through, and not as a way to bypass that, but as an opportunity to learn and have different viewpoint and perspective on how to solve and solution for it. And so for me, the idea of networking not only within your division or team, outside your division and team, outside your organization, outside the vertical that you're in is so critically important. You asked a very good question that has really challenged a lot of folks on how do you network. It's much more difficult and you have to be way more intentional than ever before. Previously, you'd be at an office or at an event and you just walk up and you talk to somebody. Water cooler talk, they call it, right? Those are some of the things that I think we took for granted and we used to do before COVID. Now, remote work, you have to be really intentional. And what that means is you would actually say, hey, I want to talk with you. I want to learn about you a little bit more. I have to set time on your calendar. I have to not just set it one time and set it and forget it, but I have to do multiple conversations, build some sort of either a one-on-one type of conversation and have it naturally mutually beneficial to both folks. Other things, there's events that go there and some events, some people get a little bit shell shocked by events. It can be overwhelming, especially if you're not an extrovert and you're more of an introvert, where you're like, wow, there's so many people here, I don't know what to do. But the whole purpose of events is everybody's there to meet other people. And when you go in with that mindset and saying, okay, I'm just going to come in, I'm going to say hi, hello, my name is, and this is what I do, and talk about them. What do you do? What are your interests? What are this? And then you can find some folks that you can start building networks with. I was on a vacation with my wife. Gosh, this was a couple of years ago. And I met a C-level person for an automotive organization. He was on vacation too, just random person, just like me. We just ended up just networking and talking. And I asked him, because he's a very, very successful person. I said, what would you tell your younger self that you should focus on most importantly? And I'm thinking he's going to say about technology or about this innovation or about that. Is where my mind naturally went. And he said networking. He's like, I wish I knew how to network better at a younger age. She's like, the reason I'm in my role and position and things that I'm able to do is because I have a really good support network and I leverage that network when I need help. I can pick up the phone anytime and talk to XYZ type of person, and they know when my call is coming in because we built that relationship, they're going to pick up and they're going to listen to me and they're going to provide some advice. So I guess my big advice is that sometimes it's uncomfortable to network, but that's where true growth occurs, is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, as easy as that sounds. But as you start building your network and the group of folks that you trust and you collaborate with, it just opens so many doors. And any challenges that you encounter, people are willing to help. It's one of those greatest words. It's like, I need some help. If you say those few words, people come out of the woodwork to help you. When you put your head down and try and do it yourself, nobody knows that you need help. But if you just raise your hand and ask for it, it's truly amazing how helpful folks can be.
I completely agree. And maybe stepping into more of the technical side of things. When it comes to balancing the organization's appetite for something new, for the new technology that's coming down the pike that maybe be promising more ROI or maybe promising to be easier, greater, better, how can you balance innovation with the need for operational maturity, as well as just general system hygiene?
People get enamored by innovation. I'm not going to say the word, but I'm going to say the word Gen AI. It's everywhere, and every organization has some solution that is going to save your business or help you become more efficient or whatever the tagline is. You have to be selective and you really have to understand, what does good look like? What problem are we trying to solve? And also, the question that hardly ever gets asked is, what problem are we going to cause by implementing that? Very few people think about that, but when you implement a new technology or capability, it's not always about, oh, it's going to solve this great thing, but what other problems are it going to cause downstream? Most people look at, hey, I want this project done. At the end of the project, it's over. But then there's the, what I call day two, is how do you care? How do you feed it? How do you, to your point, have operational hygiene around it? Make sure that it's something that can be leveraged for many years to come and provide significant value. I think once you slow down, and it doesn't mean come to a pause, it means slow down, be very methodical about what you're trying to do and why it's going to provide value. You can slow down, and then as part of slowing down, you can actually move forward and actually move much more quickly. So from my perspective, sometimes you have to slow down and move fast, which allows you to then focus on why are we doing it, what value and benefit is going to come out of it.
Something that we talked about before was this temptation maybe to chase adrenaline and busyness for busyness' sake. How have you in the past coached your teams away from that sort of thinking and more toward valuing execution and maturity of what they already have, as opposed to lighting a thousand fires just to see what burns?
I think people like being in that firefighting mode, right? It gives a little sense of adrenaline. There's, when you think about school and projects and things of that nature, there's two types of people. There's those people that get it done early and don't have to worry about it. And then there's others that wait till the last minute. And when they wait till the last minute, they have this sense of accomplishment, adrenaline, tiredness, and things of that nature. I think some people chase that. I found that if you're much more methodical, you can achieve that type of high, right? That adrenaline, that rush, and instead of waiting to the last minute or going for a technology that is exciting and new or things of that nature. So I think from my viewpoint, if you understand the reason why you want to implement something, if you take a look at the benefit that it's going to provide, too many times people get enamored by the features. Again, Gen AI, all these capabilities, these features are amazing, but what is going to be the true benefit, right? That it's gonna serve and provide for the organization. For me, it's at times it's slowing down to move fast. A lot of times teams love chaos. They love chaos. They love that firefighting mode. They love being in the throes of it. But what's interesting is when you start eliminating some of that chaos and having people be focused and purposeful on certain projects or initiatives, guess what? They deliver with better quality, they deliver usually on time, and they deliver within budget. I mean, that's the holy grail of what you're trying to do when you implement something. Quality within budget, within time, which is hardly ever done. When you start layering on all this chaos, there's a level of anonymity that people are always busy, 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 busy. But doing what? And is it driving the value, going back to that triangle? Is it driving the tip of that spear of what is the most important thing to our organization and to the people that you serve, or the customers or the members or the businesses and so on and so forth? That is what is really important and what you should focus on and drive. So when you start eliminating some of that chaos, people start freaking out a little bit, but they have that sense of calm that says, oh, wow, now I can deliver and have time to really think and focus on what's going to make a better future, which is ultimately what we all want.
And going right off of that, I think that was all brilliant advice for the selection of new things as well as the maintenance of what you already have. But when it comes to places that perhaps are having some issues sunsetting, places that maybe have a little bit of IT hoarder culture where they aren't throwing away as much as they bring in, do you have any advice when it comes to beating the bloat?
That is so hard. We are, as you mentioned, we are IT hoarders. New things come through the front door, nothing ever leaves the back door. It's usually because, goes back to some of the first statements I mentioned. There's not a lot of documentation. It's usually institutional knowledge in somebody's head, never written down, not following appropriate policy or procedures or standards, or those didn't exist at the time. Or you have an organization or part of a team or one person that says, well, I use that app to run this report, and it's the most important application or thing for me. And so a lot of times it's not worth that. I think when you approach new implementations, it sounds easy, but it's very hard. You're trying to keep things simple. Complex is easy, simple is hard. Simple is very hard, but it reaps so many dividends in the future when you try and focus on simplicity and doing things in a methodical, focused manner. It allows you, to that point, if something doesn't work, to be able to change, make it more modular, pull it out and pivot. Bloat is hard. Again, it's not as fun or sexy, if you want to use that word, as new innovation. And people don't really high five each other that much and say, wow, you got rid of the mainframe, or you got rid of this legacy tool that nobody uses. I was like, oh, wow, it took this long, is usually kind of the response. So I think prioritizing that and having a focus around it and communicating it early, knowing that it's going to be a long journey, is important. The sad part that bothers me a lot of times is to take a look at the ROI and say, you know, it's sometimes cheaper just to keep it running than it is to sunset it or migrate workload off of it. And it's just like, that is such a counter viewpoint, because it's kicking the can down the road for something else to be inappropriately documented, to fail in the future, to not be supported, not have good operational hygiene. So I'm a big advocate and a big fan of rationalization. It is just one of the hardest things to do. Implementing new, I think, is easy. Migration's easy. Doing all that stuff. Sunsetting something that is old, that has been there for years and years and years, is one of the most difficult things to do. But it is, from my viewpoint, is very, very rewarding when you can actually hit that power button. Well, not maybe physical power, but hit that virtual power button and shut it down, delete it, remove it, and then celebrate the success of a sunset.
Going back earlier where you were talking about building certain relationships, from your perspective in your position, we just had a LinkedIn Live about vendor management, and vendor relationships can be really tricky. I'm wondering, what are you looking for in maybe the ideal vendor partnership? How can vendors be integrated into a larger system and have it work for everybody?
Vendors are important, right? It's not always about them selling you something. I think it's very important to build those. Again, it goes back to the foundational conversation that we're having about relationships, collaboration, right? The triangle, right? What are they doing to help you achieve that triangle? If they're only focused on the bottom, guess what? They're misguided. And so when you talk about that with some vendors and partners, if they move from just a transactional, hey, I need this, I'm buying it, you sell it to me, to say, how can we strategize out making your future better? And at times, not necessarily through an SOW or this, but like where you should go and providing some guidance and insight is really important. But again, it takes time from both sides. It's about building that network, building that collaboration, building that trust, having those type of communications, which are critically important. If you just focus it on being transactional, it will be transactional. If you focus on a strategic, long-term partnership and have them understand what your vision is and where they may or may not apply to that, it'll reap dividends for both parties in the long run. It's very easy to see those vendors and partners that just want a quick win, quick buck, you know, end of week, end of month, end of quarter, end of year. You see that all the time. But those that are willing to invest in the partnership and the outcome of what it looks like by, and what I mean by invest is their time and your time, talking about what is the strategy, talking about what are they seeing in the market. And it's not necessarily on a salesmanship type of viewpoint, but a more of like, hey, this is what we're seeing in the industry, and other parts are doing this, and these are some successes, and these are some things, and do these apply? Understanding what your roadmap is that aligns to them, having those type of conversations, I think are critically important. We have to continue to do that. We want to make sure that we hold our vendors accountable. If they're doing something positive, let's celebrate it. If they're doing something that is either misguided or focused on just, again, revenue only, we need to call that out as a partner and make sure that we focus, again, what's the most important thing of that triangle? What's that tip? How do we achieve that enterprise and that goal for our customer?
And we are getting to the point of the podcast where I get to ask my favorite question. Although this is a tricky episode because you've spent a lot of it talking about how you used to not value networking and now you do. The question that I always ask is, if you could put a piece of advice in a bottle to yourself and send it back in time, what's the biggest piece of advice you would give yourself? And so I'm wondering, perhaps, do you have maybe a second? Otherwise, we can dig deeper into the networking one.
I'll start with networking, and while I'm
Yeah,
talking, I'll
please.
think about a secondary one. I think, again, networking is the most important thing. I talked about the story about some successful folks that I met,
And
and
it's worth repeating.
it's worth repeating. It's worth being intentional on it, and it's worth making a priority. When I talk to some folks that are either starting out in their career or want to go from an individual contributor to a manager, I talk to them, do you have a network? And most of the time, the answer is, no, I don't. And so I challenge them. I say, okay, you've got 30 days from now. Next time we have a touch point, I want you to talk to two different people and set up a cadence that you're starting to build your network. And it could be comfortable. It could be somebody on your team or somebody that's within IT or within that part of the organization, but also outside. And so I challenge folks to really start understanding the value of that networking. A lot of folks don't know how to talk. And I was like, the most important thing, the easiest thing to do from a networking perspective is, hey, tell me about yourself. People love telling about themselves because that's what they know most, is themselves. And they can talk about their experiences, successes, and things of that nature. And so I drive on the value of networking and collaboration and partnerships, which I think are really, really important. Maybe another one is probably around maybe emotion. And it doesn't mean don't be emotionless, but understand that how you act and how you react can change a situation. Me in a leadership position, I can't come into a meeting and be all scared and be all frantic and be all angry, because it's going to really change the mood of the team. So it's about coming in with the best version of yourself, a lot of positivity, because that helps garner a team that wants to be part of that as well. They want to be happy. They want to be successful. They want to be part of a winning team. Nobody wants to be part of a losing team. They all want to be a part of winners. Even if it's quick, small wins, the more we win, the better it is. And so I think it's, showing up to work, having a smile on your face. I used to work with this one salesperson, and he had a mirror right next to his laptop. And it basically, it literally, it said smile. So he had a mirror facing himself. So when he picked up the phone, he would smile when he talked to folks, because it helps, right?
And you can hear it. Even over the phone, you can hear a smile.
Can. Exactly. Thank you. Right. And so when I was, younger, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. This is foolish. Nobody's going to see you. You can be, but when you think about it, if you smile, you know what? You become more jovial. You become want to talk to you more, and people want to listen, and it becomes an even better conversation. So I think it's about really around emotion and bringing your best version of yourself to work every single day. It can be challenging. I mean, trust me, people have highs and lows. It doesn't necessarily mean experience those, but also if you are frustrated, you don't necessarily want to put it in front of a big room, in front of other leaders or things of that nature. You can have the one-on-one conversations, the whole thing around networking, and voice that. It's very healthy to voice that you have frustrations with somebody on your team or somebody else, right? And it doesn't mean being mean or things of that nature, but it's just like, hey, there's something that was said that bothered me. Can we kind of get through this and work it out? Because at the end of the day, they're part of your team. They want very similar goals too. And how do we help each other achieve those? So I think the idea of networking, collaboration, building relationships, but also understanding that how do you bring your best version of yourself to work every single day will help achieve those outcomes that you're trying to get to.
And this goes right into the very, very last question, which is, if the people at home in the audience would like to network with you, do you have means for that? Usually people will say, find me on LinkedIn, perhaps?
And LinkedIn is the best. It's easy. Type someone's name in, it has their company and usually the face. That's what I use. That's how I use to communicate with folks. Some folks that I used to work with in the past and just recently reached out to me. I had a work anniversary and somebody I haven't spoken with in, I don't know, maybe like 12 years reached out and said, "Hey, it's work anniversary. How you been?" And we build a relationship again and start building up some of those conversation and things of that nature. So I think LinkedIn for me is the best way to get a hold of me. And I always look forward to talking and meeting new people because it goes back to what we said. Networking is very important because one day I may need your help and another day you might need my help. And so if we know each other and we can build that collaboration and we can build that trust, why not leverage each other for positivity?
And so, again, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for being so generous with your expertise. This has been When IT Hits the Fan, brought to you by Rhyno Healthcare Solutions. He has been Petar, and and everyone at home, have a great day.